Hello, welcome to Paint by Blunders. Today we're looking at the Jump Pack Intercessor Marines, and I have painted them in the Ultramarine style. But the process of blocking in the colours and then using an enamel wash to make them look nice and Grimdark, you can use for any chapter, so it's not just an Ultramarines thing. If you enjoyed the video, please do think of giving it a thumbs up, give us a little comment, and if you haven't and enjoy what we do, please do consider subscribing. Enjoy the video, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Let's do it. So this is our starting point. All I've done is given him a little zenithal, just because it's easy for me to see where we're going and to add some highlights. We're going to use dark Parisian blue, and then we're going to come from above with the pro acrylic blue. All that's going to do is just add some nice depth and shadows. You don't have to, you could just use the pro acrylic blue and it would still look great. I'm going to be applying these with an airbrush, but you really don't have to, and this is the only time in the video I will be using an airbrush. So after we've got our solid blue tones down, I'm going to come in now with Vallejo Model Color Black, and I'm just going to pick out all of those little bits with a size 2 brush for this one. You could, if you wanted to, just use Black Legion, the contrast paint, but I prefer this. Just trying to be careful not to hit the blue that we've just laid down. And anytime you get to a tight area, just switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to then pick out the holster and his little pouches with warm brown from Pro Acrylic, but you could easily use Rhinox hide or any similar GW paint. As with most of my videos, and I always say it, just use the biggest brush you feel comfortable with to maintain your accuracy still. So I grew up with Warhammer in the 90s, and I always think of Ultramarines as having the red chainsword and the red bolter casings, and that is exactly what I'm going to do, with a little bit of Mephiston red. So if you were quite experienced with doing grime, this is probably the point where you would add your decals and transfers, but for the purpose of this video, and if you've never used grime before, I'm going to do it at the end. So that is the reason why it's not happening now. This is also the time where you might want to add a bit of varnish to your model to give it a bit more of a safety net, because when you're griming, there is a chance if you're a bit abrasive or leave the spirit on too long, it will remove the paint. I've never had any problems, so I'm not going to varnish it here. So we're going on to the metallics. Vallejo Game Color Chainmail. I absolutely love this stuff. We're just picking out the chain blade, the vents on the jetpack, the muzzle, the barrels on the pistol. Just trying to be as careful as we can, but as I said in the intro, one of the reasons why I really like this process is because where you're just blocking all the colours and you're washing the entire model, it's a bit more forgiving with messiness. You know, if you make a mistake, it's easy to go back and just go over it. Next up, Retributor Armour, and we're going to be doing the Aquila and the shoulder pads, but I will be honest, I completely forgot about the trims on the shoulder pads. So there's a few final details like the eye lenses, and this fella's got a grenade on his belt, and the rock is just going to go in Eshin Grey, just getting all those final little details done before we start applying the grime. So at this stage we've blocked everything in, you can go round, you can touch anything up, and we're ready to grime. If you've not used this stuff before, you do need some mineral spirits with it, otherwise you're just going to destroy your model. But we are going to smother this over the entire thing using an old brush. I think I picked this brush up for £2 from Hobbycraft, I think. And we're going to smother this all over, as I said, and you can leave it for quite some time to dry. Some people leave it overnight. I tend to do it till it looks like this. So now we're ready to start taking the grime back off again. So to do this, we're going to put a little bit of white spirit into a little dish, and I will be using the makeup sponges to start wicking it away. You can use a cotton bud or you can use just a paintbrush, but these are my favourites because I feel they're just not as abrasive as a cotton bud, and I feel like I can get good control with it. Now, I don't normally move my hand at this sort of speed. I have sped up the footage just so you can see how it looks. One other thing I do really like about griming, so if you don't take enough off, you can come back and take more off later on. It's not a, you know, you're not really governed too much by that. And if you've taken too much off, you can just reapply it. And as I said earlier, if you did put your transfers on, you could see now where they would grime in quite nicely with the rest of the model. And here we are. If you wanted very fast battle ready, I mean, you could call this done. As always, I'm going to take this a little bit further with just a few edge highlights, a bit of dry brushing, etc, etc. So we're going to come back in with the base colours to start with. So I'm just using the blue. Another thing I quite like about making them a little bit grimdark, you don't have to worry about edge highlighting everything. You can just pick out what you think is the most interesting to you. So as I said, we're coming back in with the base colour, so I'm just going to use the warm brown. One little Brucey bonus for this, if you did want to add a second highlight, it's very easy to do so. Coming back in with that Mephiston red, but also a second highlight for the red. If you wanted to make it pop a bit more, you could use Evil Sun's Scarlet. Metallics, I very much do the same. I just add a little bit of the silver. I don't touch the gold, but I do add a little bit of silver just as an edge highlight to the shoulder pads and the weapon handle, just as if it's like been chipped away. So I'm using Administratum Grey for anything that we did in the black. This edge highlight just really helps define it, and it just stops it looking flat. So with that done, we would have highlighted with all the original base colours. The only one I would suggest pushing further is the blue. And I've used Sky Blue from AK Interactive. As you can see, it really helps it just makes the model pop a hell of a lot more. And you don't have to spend a great deal of time to make it look that effective. So this is him after all the edge highlights, etc. The only things I really want to do now is just sort out the eyes and a few bits of weathering. The trusty goggles are coming out for the eyes. And I'm just using the original base colour again. And then I'll just dot the corner with the bright yellow green from Pro Acrylic. But obviously, whatever colour lenses you go for on your Marines. Now we're starting to look a little bit more respectable on this Marine now. So we're going to start looking at the battle damage. There's a few ways you can do this. You could just use the grime. But I'm going to use Rhinox hide with a tiny bit of Black Legion. And I'm just going to use the old sponge technique where you can just pull off an old bit of sponge, dab it in a bit of the paint, and then just start doing battle damage. The reason why I do it on my hand as opposed to something flat is because most of the edges are slightly curved. So I use that curved bit of my thumb just to see how it's going to press against something curved. Pointless, many would say, but it's just a habit I've got into. And I'm just going to go around and I'm just going to look where I want a little bit of damage and a little bit of interest. Now after this battle damage is done, I'm going to say he is done. So I'm going to base him in keeping with my army, and let's see what he looks like after that. And here he is. So for the base, all I used was some texture paste from AK with a quick bit of Agrax over the top, and then just pigment powders that I have jammed across his feet and the base. And I think they're super effective, super simple to adding a bit of drama and a bit more life. So that is him complete, apart from any transfers you might want to add, or you might be one of those very talented people that does these things freehand. So the reason I'm doing the decals at the end is because if you haven't grimed before, the white spirit can pull them away quite easy if you don't varnish them quite heavily. So I use the Vallejo decal fixer and decal softener. Is it the best? No, but it is very cheap. So I use the decal fixer over the shoulder pad first, and then I line it up, and as soon as I've pressed it down, I add the softener when it's roughly in place, just because getting it off the paper, if you've softened it first, can be a bit tricky. But once I put the softener on, I do normally leave it, 30 seconds to a minute just to work its magic. But it seems to be quite forgiving. You can move it around a little bit. And you can visibly see it start to crease and wrinkle the decal. And then I come in with the trusty cotton bud and just do the classic roll it away and smooth it out and just wick away any loose moisture. As a Brucey bonus, I have found that my old griming sponges are quite handy for doing that as well. So I'll put some matte varnish over it as soon as they're dry, and I will just grime them in like I would anything else, and then put a little bit of battle damage on them as well, just to blend them in. As I say, you could have done this earlier, but I find it easier to do at the end to save any mistakes when you're rubbing this model with white spirit. And thank you very much for checking out the video. If you found it helpful, please do give us a thumbs up, comment, and do consider subscribing. Let's get this guy on the wheel.